I think being in that spot of God is all that I have and he is all that I need and I'm content with that, I think that is such a good spot to be in. Mm-hmm. That's almost the spot you want to be in before you get into a relationship.
Yeah.
Because if you're not in that spot and then you get into a relationship, that's not just going to magically change.
Right.
It even might get even harder because now you're tempted with whoever you're with to take that spot. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the It Stands Written podcast. My name is Braden and I have Justin in front of me. Now that we have finished our series on the second most important decision of your life, we are doing our Q&A episode. The last couple episodes, we open it up to you listeners to send in us any questions that you might want answered on the podcast. So we got some good questions from you guys and we thank you for sending them in, but we're just going to go through and just answer these questions. Justin, I'm going to throw a question over to you, let you answer it, and then we'll kind of just go back and forth.
Sounds great. Let's do it. Absolutely.
Awesome. First question that we got is, how do you go from being God is all that I have and all that I need and being content in him to now having a potential spouse?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's nothing that changes. And we said that at the beginning, right? And this is a very good question, but let me underline something that we said that I'll build on now. When you walk down the aisle, if Christ is your all and you swap jewelry and say words and you come back, Christ is still your all.
Right.
That hasn't changed.
Yeah.
That person doesn't compete with Christ. That person pushes you to Christ. That person makes you more like Christ. And that's something you've settled, already. But the question's a very practical one too, because you don't want, and this is so subtle, you don't want your partner to be the source of your joy.
Right.
And you don't want your partner to be the source of your sufficiency, but you are feeling complete now because the two have become one. Mm-hmm. And that Genesis 2:18 complementariness thing, that you don't have those gaps. You still enjoy your marriage and experience that, but for his sake. Yeah, it is. The guy that did my wedding with Jana, he's been my mentor since then, and maybe a year before then. So since like 1995, I remember him when he was giving the wedding address. Very specifically saying to me, the goal of your marriage is not to satisfy each other. That is the work of the Son of God. Yeah. And I remember just freezing in the moment. You know how sometimes, a couple's up there, they're not listening to anything. They're just looking at the lights, can't believe that I'm getting married. They're taking in the whole moment. Mm-hmm. I was transfixed on the guy. And it was a sermon. I got to hear a sermon at my wedding. It was a full-length sermon, but it was the power and the impact of a message. It is not the job of your wife to satisfy you. It is not the job of your husband to satisfy you. Although when you do it his way, you experience the benefit of his gift of satisfaction in your relationship unselfishly. So it's the amazing mystery of how marriage works. Two people unselfish, fixed on Christ, serve one another and are, as a result, both completely satisfied. But the verse that jumped in my mind when he said that, and this is really good news for married couples and singles, and sometimes singles hear this more than married couples should, so this question really is good to be aimed at a married couple. It says in Colossians 2:9, for in him all the fullness of deity dwells in bodily form. Listen to this, Braden. And in him you have been made complete. So you are not made complete when you get married, although you're experiencing something that God built into his world that completes you in a temporal sense, where we looked at it, right, in Genesis 2, you are not good alone, Adam. You need a helper. So by design, before sin, you have gaps, holes, and things in you that are inadequate that only can be supplied by God through that wife. Yeah. So I think that's the key. Yeah. It also says, and there's this interesting, we didn't talk about it much when we're there, but can we look at 1 Corinthians 7 together? Remember that whole thing about contentment? Because that's kind of what this question, triggers and calls for. And Paul says this thing over and over again. You see it in verse 17. Only as the Lord has assigned each one, as God has called each, and this is the effectual of call of salvation. In this manner, let him walk. What he's talking about in marriage is, did God save you when you were single? He's going to say, stay single. Did he save you when you were married? Stay married. But the principle of contentment is the one he addresses. Don't expect this marriage partner to be what only God can be for you, right? And then he's going to give multiple examples of what condition were you in when God saved you. He's going to say it again, verse 20, each man must remain in that condition in which he's called. Now, you'll remember, Braden, when we said that, we didn't say that it's wrong then to get married if God. What we're saying is then the principles in the chapter will be the indicator that you should move out of the one marital status to the other, right? But notice then in verse 24, the last time he says it, there's a key phrase that's very different than every other time before he said it that answers this question. Brethren, each one is to remain. Normally it read, each one is to remain in that condition in which he was called. What's the added phrase in verse 24?
With God.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
You are to remain with God in that condition in which you were called.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're not, if you're single, you're remaining single with God, who is the source of your sufficiency and completeness. If God changes that, you are to remain with God as the source of your sufficiency in marriage.
You're right.
And where this really, transfers practically is we do struggle sometimes to know how to appropriate that with God. And one of the things that God gives us is a spouse. I mean, God doesn't give you a hug. God doesn't cuddle with you. God doesn't, when you lay your head down, I remember early days in marriage, laying my head down on my wife's lap and crying because life felt so hard, some of the things we were facing. And it'd be great to do that. So what God does is provide a spouse who points you to him, who carries you to him. And it's hard because the tangible expectation that you want to have in that moment, you're having by faith, not by sight. And so it's easy and subtle for a couple to transfer that to each other and then develop a habit of relying on each other rather than the Lord for that. Okay, so let me kick it back to you because I think you know the answer. Now, he's not anticipating this. But what do you think a couple could do practically to make sure that that's not true once they're married, or even how they could build that into their dating or engaged relationship, pointing each other constantly to God rather than each other without being like, don't look to me, don't talk to me, go talk to God. What are some things that a couple could do?
Yeah, I think some super just practical things straight off the bat are just read the word together.
Yep.
Like if you have, maybe pick a book of the Bible and do like a weekly Bible study. Just like go through it, talk about it with each other. Thing that I've been doing recently is like me and my girlfriend will do prayer nights, like Sunday nights. Like on Sunday we'll do, praises of the week, sin struggles, and then like your upcoming week. And then we'll just like share with each other and then pray for it. Cause that helps us just keep our focus on serving each other, not putting them over the Lord, but serving each other with prayer. So just super practical prayer and reading the word and doing those things together, but also still making sure that you're doing them separately. Because, you still have your own relationship with the Lord.
Yep.
And you need to be putting your alone time with him over your alone time with whoever you're with.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. I think I can point to times as you were talking in my own life and marriage where very specifically, and Jana is such a helper to me in this, she'll even say, why don't we stop and pray right now? And I'm a pastor, and I'm like, oh, duh. Like, it's easy. It's easy. But it's also harder when you have so many distractions. Remember Mary and Martha? And I think that's where it's practical for a marriage couple is like, Martha, Martha, you're worried and bothered about so many things. Only one thing is necessary. And it's not get up and serve and do all these things. It's sit at the feet of the Lord and listen to him and learn from him. And a couple can point each other to that. That's key. So, I think it's a phenomenal question. It really is when you start to address, okay, if God is all I need and being content in him, that doesn't change anything when I have a spouse. I continue to remind my spouse of that. And what's neat is every day I'm going to have reminders of my own inadequacies to try to be that. All you have to do is try to depend on your spouse for that. It's impossible. It's like trying to sit on a chair made out of paper. Your spouse isn't designed by God to bear the weight of your soul. And the sooner you remember that, you bring God into that moment, you've done your job.
Yeah. If I can add to this question too, like I think being in that spot of God is all that I have and he is all that I need and I'm content with that, I think that is such a good spot to be in. That's almost the spot you want to be in before you get into a relationship.
Yeah.
Because if you're not in that spot and then you get into a relationship, that's not just going to magically change.
Right.
It even might get even harder because now you're tempted with whoever you're with to take that spot.
Right.
And I think knowing that God gives you all the things that you need, and the verse that I was thinking of when you were talking is Philippians 4, verse 19. It says, and my God will supply all your needs according to his riches and glory in Christ Jesus. So kind of like how Paul is talking in 1 Corinthians 7, like, remain in that condition with God. Sometimes God calls you out of that and brings you into something. Sometimes he provides you with a potential spouse because he knows that you need it.
Yeah, that's really good. Really good. You know, one example of that, Braden, that I've seen that really illustrates your point is couples who don't really appropriate and apply that. What ends up happening, and this is tempting, believe me, this is tempting. It's not like, oh, I'm looking down on this couple. This is a regular, clear and present danger in any couple's relationship, no matter how mature they are. And the most mature couples will be the ones who go, yeah, been there, done that, and learn from that and grown from that. But here's the thing that you see and that I've observed is people who depend on one another as the source of their joy, as the source of their satisfaction. When that doesn't satisfy, they find a disappointment in that partner that motivates them to say, therefore, that person is the problem. And so I'm going to dispense with, leave that relationship and then go to another relationship. So there's a breakup. It's dramatic. And then what happens is I put the weight of that disappointment on the new relationship to rescue me from that last thing that was so awful. But the problem is not only am I still now depending on that new person to be the source of the weight that my soul has only been made to find in God, but the previous disappointment with it is also coming as often called baggage with that to sit now on top of it. And because that can't hold it either, not only does the new disappointment become a problem, but the previous disappointment that I had hoped would be solved by you comes crashing down with it. And so now there's a compounding and an exponential multiplier of the pain and the drama and a new kind of guilt and a new sense of insecurity because that's a second relationship that failed. This is a third relationship that failed. This is the fifth relationship that failed. And what's the common denominator? You could say, well, the common denominator is me, and you would be right. But the problem underneath all of that specifically is you were looking for someone to be what only God can be for you. Find that in him, and that person won't bear the weight of that. That person will be your help to that end.
Yeah. No, that's so good. That really just cuts down to the heart of the issue. And that's what we want to focus on is the heart and not just the surface level stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
All right, moving on to question 2. This one is, how can single people better encourage people that are in a relationship?
All I want to know is my wife just sent me a text. I love you with all my heart, best bosom friend. I just wanted to get that on air. That just happened in real time.
Wow.
I
see your phone blowing up over there across the table.
It's love notes via text. Sorry, I completely didn't listen to your question. Please read it again.
I'm used to that. Just kidding. How can single people better encourage people that are in a relationship?
That's a great question. The verse that comes to mind is in Hebrews 13, and it said, let marriage be held in honor by all. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Married people are going to hold marriage in esteem and honor, and even those who've had a rough go at it. But all people are responsible. That's a command. And you know what's interesting about that? It comes at the end of a book where the author's been throwing down how to be faithful and persevere in persecution. I wouldn't have expected 12 and a half chapters of intense, don't walk away, hold on to Christ. Here's Melchizedek. And then he's like, hey, you want to know what to do with all this? Make sure marriage itself is held in honor by all. And then he goes on to say, make sure that the marriage bed remains undefiled, which means that you can be married and still defile your marriage bed, not necessarily by bringing something foreign like another person into it, but worldly thinking and patterns and activities into it as well. So there is a way it's designed. So I think a single person can say, you know what? Marriage is a good gift by God. It's one of his greatest gifts.
Yeah.
And even if they're not experiencing it, the temptation at the moment to downplay it so as to give them some sense of not feeling that they're left out, that's a mistake. What they say is marriage is God's idea and it's wonderful. And a couple who sees that should applaud it, should honor it. And here's something really specific that a single person can do. Find what you see in that couple as evidences of grace. To encourage them, not brag on them, but to actually encourage them. You know what? You may not have known it, but I saw the way that you handled that really annoying thing that happened and honored your wife and didn't give in to anger. I noticed that. You may not know that I was watching, but I was instructed by that, and I saw an evidence of grace there. You know, it really encourages me. The way that even if your wife doesn't agree, she is willing to come alongside you. She's willing to support you. She's asking good questions still. And yet she doesn't kick against you. Like you see those kinds of evidences of grace. You know, you guys have been married for how long? You seem like you're newlyweds. So looking at a couple, because I tell you what, couples go through stuff every day that's hard. It's hard to be married to another sinner. I know because I'm one. You know, I'm a sinner, and my wife has to be married. Yeah, I know. Shocking,
I never
right?
guess.
Yeah, right. Mirror. My wife has to endure my struggles of sanctification,
Right.
and my 5 children the same, and life in a broken world, and ministry, which is very demanding. And at this point, as I'm recording, a massive responsibility with a company that I own, where she just says, "How do I support you? What do you need? What are some of the things that?" All those kinds of things are part of saying, this is hard, isn't it? And if I can point to encouragement that speaks life into you, if I can be available to help you, and even to go, is there anything you guys need? Hey, can I watch your kids for date night?
Yeah.
You know, you guys, why don't you guys go out and do X, Y, and Z, and I'll dog sit for you, you know? By the way, would you dog sit for us? We need somebody to dog sit for us next week.
I charge $200 an hour.
Really? That's not how you answer this question. $200 an hour. But I think there's ways that you can identify evidences of grace, that you can point to what is in fact God's design. I think one example of this that I found recently that seems kind of tragic to me is Mother's Day. Mother's Day is going away in most churches. I won't miss Christmas, Easter, or Mother's Day as a pastor in preaching. Mother's Day, I may miss it this year because of Book of Revelation, or maybe I can make a strange tie into the Church of Pergamum or something. But this is what happens on Mother's Day is pastors are like, well, there's a lot of moms out there that couldn't be moms, and there's a lot of single women out there that feel isolated on Mother's Day. And there's people who've been divorced, or what about the women who've had children that have died or never, married, and there's a whole list of people who don't seem to derive encouragement from a specific day devoted to celebrating moms. And then what happens is pastors are like, so we're not going to preach on it. I'm like, you're missing a golden opportunity to elevate what God built into his world before he built any other society and structure. He built the family. And the family is a backbone of civilization. You break down the family, which our culture is doing right now, and especially the moms. You're tanking your civilization. So I just think it's sometimes like, well, if that's not me and that's not my situation, I'm not encouraged by that message, and that doesn't equally represent, what benefits. No, honor it, honor marriage. So those are some things I think that specifically honoring it in every opportunity you get, identifying evidences of grace. But what would you say? Because you're a single guy, right? You're dating. Well, you're unmarried, I should say.
Not married, yeah,
not married yet. When's that going to take place? Anyway, what are some of the things when you look at married couples, your desire to honor God's design? What are some ways that works for you?
I think one for me is like I was actually able to do this the other day. Me and my girlfriend and I went out on a little double date with a married couple that she's been friends with for a little bit. They're like middle-aged couple, but I was able to like ask them just like, oh, how long have you been married? And like, when did you guys meet? Or how did you guys meet? Stuff like that. I think for me, it's like being intentional about getting to know their story and know who they are, and like asking those intentional questions, showing that you actually care about them.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. I think that does help. that does honor. And in a day when people are saying, what's the point of getting married? We can shack up and do the same thing. A lot of people are getting married late right now in life because they don't want the responsibility of it. They want the sort of the benefits of it without the commitment to it. You know, this is a day, I think, imitating it, sitting down and learning from couples, like you just described. I think those are all very valuable things that you can honor and elevate. That couples retreats, you know, things like that really, really speak to a married couple. And if there's anything right now, let me just add one more piece to this. If there's anything right now our culture needs, it's the stability of the family. But remember what gospel picture is tied to marriage. In Ephesians 5, I think one of the reasons that Satan is so attacking marriages in specific is because marriage is a picture of the gospel. It's a picture of Christ in the church. It is a so long as the gospel is forefront, you have the best, most visible picture anywhere in the world of how salvation works in a marriage. It's the point of Ephesians 5. And so if you don't honor that, you end up diminishing or at least dimming the light of the gospel so that people can't see. So drawing attention to the point of marriage, I think also is necessary in that. And I think that's why Satan wants divorce, and I think that's why he wants to graffiti it. Yeah,
100%. Totally agree. That's super good. All right. So question number 3, this question is, what practical premarital counseling advice would you give? For example, timeline for premarital counseling. What are the steps that you take? Would you do pre-engagement counseling, just stuff like that?
Great question. Yeah, this is so super practical. I am a big proponent of pre-engagement counseling because, well, a couple of reasons. Number one is you want to be sure that this is the person you want to take that stuff. Dating is testing the waters for marriage. So once you are sure that this is the person you want to marry, set a date, get the dress. How long does it take to get the license and the venue? Go. So I'm way more on the take longer on the front end. And then once you know, go.
Short engagement.
Yeah. Well, especially because of the temptations that exist.
Yeah, you know, when probably get way harder once.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Now there are other practical considerations that a couple will often factor, like, do I finish school? You know, do I continue on? You know, I'm a sophomore in college. I got 2 more years. We're convinced God wants us to be married. I'm going to stay at home and be a wife and mother. Should we, incur another $80,000 of debt for a job, that's not going to be like, those are practical things that a couple needs to consider. Or are we going to unnecessarily prolong that? Biblical evidence for this is 1 Corinthians 7. 1 Corinthians 7, Paul talks about how if God has brought you together, you should not unnecessarily prolong that, or you are going to burn, because God has no longer given you the restraint he gives to singles. He's given you one another, and a natural, righteous, romantic relationship should follow. And if you're resisting that, you're putting yourself in harm's way. So I think the scripture would fall very much on the side of shorter versus longer. But I'll also say, I can't tell you how many couples that we get closer to the end, maybe I've not done their premarital counseling, but I'm getting towards the end and I'm starting to ask just some basic questions. And I'm like, nobody's asked them this. Nobody's talked to them about this. People have been focused primarily on the ceremony. And everything on the ceremony. We're going to get married on this day, this time. Will you marry us and do our premarital? And I've said to couples, if we uncover something in counseling that we discover you should either not get married or wait, are you willing to take the date off the table? If they say no, then I say, I'm probably not the guy to counsel you. If they say yes, they're already feeling there may be some steps that we've run past that we're trying to go backtrack and gather up. But I think the best way to do it is to say, even this list of 12, we have walked through and experienced these in a wonderful way, and it is clear to us. And now that we have that, let's go. Yeah. Because then you're sure. The last thing you want, and Braden, I've talked to guys and girls who stood there at the altar. They've admitted, you'd be shocked. They admitted, I was at the altar going, I still don't know if this is the right decision. And then defaulted to, well, he just said, you're now husband and wife. So in God's sovereignty, we're married, and I don't believe in divorce, so there's no way out. So I guess it's God's will. And that kind of fatalism doesn't inspire the confidence that you need to have a marriage that's pleasing to God and satisfying to each other. It's built on a wobbly foundation. So So I'd say a couple things. Practically getting more specific, I would say you need a good premarital book.
Yeah.
Tying the Knot by Rob Greene. Excellent. If you want more of a workbook, this is the one that Jan and I did. It's still out there. Preparing for Marriage God's Way. Wayne Mack, who as I record this is still alive. He's flipped the continent of Africa upside down in the biblical counseling area. A wonderful man of God. Raises all the issues and all the scriptures you need to think through to do your own homework on that, where you do it together in the Word and you come back and meet with a couple. And that's the second thing. You need a key couple. You need a godly couple. And that's question 11. Are we affirmed by wise counselors?
Yeah.
That's your couple. Get a couple who models godliness, who's transparent and open. Not a couple who's going through the motions with you. Well, what'd you get for number one? Number two, but asking hard, penetrating questions.
Yeah.
Covering the gamut of things like finances, like parenting, like expectations unspoken. There's a list of things that you want to surface and raise in that pre-marital or pre-engagement context. Now, once you've worked through these issues and you're sure, you can still and should still do something in God's Word very preparatory and proactive toward the building of your relationship to say, now that we've got these things clear, what are the things that we need to know and be discipled in? Those are like the post-engagement things. Do you know how to do a budget? How did you handle money, in your home? It's completely different. How did you fight? You guys never said a word. I never saw my parents fight. Well, my parents threw things. Those are things that can be surfaced and raised. So I think that's good. I think that couple needs to be one of the primary sources of honest accountability. How are you doing with your purity? And specifically, not like, good, yeah, we're good. Yeah, no problems. Nope, none at all. Don't struggle with it.
Yeah.
Okay, liar. What? Then you haven't answered question number 12. So, that accountability, I think, is vital. And I think that the people in your life need to be trusted enough where they can speak to and call out things that are unhealthy. Because early patterns of things that are unhealthy don't just go away. They grow and widen and they deepen. I would also say, shameless plug, take the CVI, the Core Values Index.
Yeah.
So that's what my company is using as we coach. And I use it in every premarital context. And I use it in a lot of postmarital context too, where people are like, oh my word, how do you know me? I'm like, I don't know you. I just know everything about you because of this. It's a diagnostic to help me understand what the issues are. What are your potential conflicts going to be? Where are your fears? What is it going to be when you retreat to a conflict strategy, the way that you go dark? What are the areas where you have a great synergy? What are the areas you're going to have agony with one another? Are there areas where neither of you have a line of sight? So both of you are going to struggle. And if you don't pay attention to it, this will be a fatal flaw. Tools like that, and there's others, but tools like that can give you some insights into, this would be just really, really helpful. So I find those kinds of things really practical, on my end. Do you want to add to that list?
I was just going to add another book, and you can attest to it. I think you went through it, but When Sinners Say I Do by Dave Harvey.
Yeah.
And then I think he just came out with a new book called I Still Do.
Yeah, I just got it.
Yeah. So that's a good one for now that you are married, that kind of follow-up questions.
Yeah.
And also to add with the people that you're getting wise counsel from, I think, and you can add to this, but I think that should be someone that's in your church, the church that you're going to, because those are people that see the most into your lives.
Yep.
You don't want someone that you're distant from where all they know about you is just the questions that you're answering.
Yeah.
You want it to be someone that can see those patterns.
Absolutely right, for sure. And that is the best scenario. And that's why God's given the local church, right?
Right.
And that's why the community, like sanctification is always described in Scripture as a community project. It always is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good word.
All right. Question 4. What are some things you wish you had talked about with Jana before marriage?
We talked about everything that we knew.
Yeah.
We talked about, so a list of we just mentioned some of them there, like past, upbringing. I grew up as an atheist in an atheist home where my dad was gone. My stepdad was a drunk, passed out, and he threw things when he was awake and played the guitar in his underwear when he wasn't working. So how weird is that?
Yeah.
So that was my upbringing. Single wide trailer filled with roaches and a possum sleeping under my bed at one point. That was my upbringing. My wife grows up in a Christian home, listening to sound doctrine. Her dad's an elder with John MacArthur at Grace Community Church. She goes to school in Newport Beach, uppity, classy, mannered. It couldn't be more green
Totally
acres.
opposite. Yeah.
Totally opposite. And yet it works, and we love how it works.
Yeah.
But there are differences, and knowing that's helpful. Past sin. This is where and this is why you also choose wisely now. What is it that you regret that you didn't save for your spouse, that you gave to somebody else that they need to know? Past sins. This is my history. This is what you're marrying. Obviously, things like if there was a divorce or if there's another child, those are obvious things, right?
Yeah.
But now I had, by God's grace, God just protected Jana. I was the first guy she ever dated. She was a virgin when she married me. She's the first guy. I'm the first guy she ever kissed. She got to experience. Here's the gift she gave to me. All of her firsts were with me. Which is the most incredible honor that you could ever receive. Now, when a couple can both give that to each other, wow.
Yeah.
It really is amazing. But if there's regrets, and not that you share in a way that's like shameful, but what if you need to go get an STD test? What if multiple partners have things floating inside your body that now you're about to put in your spouse's body?
Yeah.
And it's like, these are things that you need to know.
Yeah.
And they need to know what they're getting into. Oh, yeah, I have a spouse and we have a kid and visitation rights this kid's living with us in the summer. Those are the kinds of things that you'll find out kind of anyway. But those are the things that have to be first shared. I think broadening out, how many kids do you want? Philosophy on parenting. What are your dreams? What are your fears? That Understanding Your Wife notebook that we talked about a few episodes back, that's filled with all kinds of questions of things that you'd want to ask one another and try to know. But really what's underneath your question or that person's question, Braden, is how do we surface what are otherwise unspoken expectations that we can address and get on the same page now? And then how weighty are they? Are any one of those things a deal breaker? If you've got a standard and criteria of what you're looking for, but that person doesn't meet it, is that God's criteria? Is it something that's forgivable? Those are an issue. Limitations, even things like wealth. I have X amount of dollars when I turn this age that is going to, I'm not saying this is true of me, I'm giving a hypothetical, I only wish it was true. When this thing happens or I reach this age or this person dies, I'm set to inherit X. Well, how are we going to spend that or save that or steward that? Or where do you want to live and career? I feel the call to ministry. Well, I don't. Okay, that's a weightier game, game changer. Well, you're going to be a pastor. Don't expect me to be a pastor's wife. Those are the kinds of things that you have to sort through on the front end in the beginning. Are there legal issues? Some couples, and this is a stickier issue, and I understand it, but I don't know that I've ever urged another believer to do this, prenuptial agreements. There's some cases where a mega wealthy person has the vested interest not only of his wealth, which he now shares with her, she becomes, they become one in, but where a person's company or he's beholden to investors or a board, like how does that all work when you get married? There are some people that their sins are obvious and then others follow them to judgment, Paul said to Timothy. And so there are some people, sad as it is, that prey on the marriage relationship to blind other people through emotions to what they're really after, which is worldly. And I understand why there are certain provisions that people put in place to protect against that. Although, man, if you're having to do that, you really haven't gone through questions 1 through 12. There's a lot to consider. And I guess what I'm saying is there's things that are weightier depending on the circumstance and life that a person is. But Jana and I shared everything. And she had and has access to ask me anything, to look at my computer, to look at my phone, who you talking to, where are you going, where'd you stay, what'd you do, all those kinds of things. That's just completely you develop early on a pattern of no secrets. No secrets.
Yeah. This next question, actually, that kind of answers it, but we'll get into more depth on it. But this one is, are there things that spouses should deliberately keep from one another? In other words, is it okay for spouses to keep secrets from one another, for example, to protect the other person?
Well, okay, so that last phrase maybe adds a nuance to it that would otherwise make me just go flat out bold no. So no secrets. No secrets. There's no reason to have secrets. If you're one, there's no place for secrets. Now, there might be some things, given that last phrase there, like, for example, in my role as a pastor, people will divulge things to me about their struggles, about their spouse, about some things that they're wrestling with in their life. And they're trusting as a pastor, there's a level of confidentiality that I don't violate at Pillow Talk.
Yeah.
Now, what's happened is Jana and I have both agreed in advance, I don't want to know. And so she's like, I don't want to go to church and sit there and worship and have everybody else's issues and struggles on my mind while I'm trying to worship the Lord and minister to them.
Yeah.
But if there's things that rise to the level where I need her help, or if there's things that rise to the level where they require church discipline or things like that, I remember even facing this issue as an elder. You know, as an elder, there's certain things that you end up talking about where somebody will invariably say, guys, we're not talking to our wives about this. And that really developed because some of the guys on the leadership team didn't have control over their homes and over their wives. And those wives were the ones who went and talked to other women and other elders' wives, and then they were the neck that turned the head, so that when the guy came back to the next elders meeting, his wife was really running the elders through him. And like, no, we're not doing that. Well, that's a different problem. So when I look at even a spiritual leader that would be entrusted with confidential information, I'm looking also at his wife. And I'm looking at how he manages their confidentiality. But if she's the kind of woman who can bear the weight of those more confidential things, I need to be able to trust that, or I can't have him.
Yeah.
That's part of his responsibility. So the kind of the underlying principle is only what Jana and I agree that she doesn't want to know, like that, we don't share. If she'll say to me, hey, I know something's going on there. Do you need my help? Is everything okay? And then it's up to my discretion, what to share. But I don't go home and divulge people's deepest, darkest who, share that with me.
Yeah.
But apart from that, there's no secrets.
Yeah.
There's nothing that should be hidden from each other. That's what it is to be one.
Yeah.
So I think that's like really clear.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of having two godly people together, is that how you're explaining, Jana doesn't want to know the things that are confidential. And that's got to be super helpful within those things that she doesn't need to know or you don't need to share.
Well, and some obvious silly things would be like, birthdays and anniversaries,
surprises,
and stuff like that's off the, you can lie about that all day long.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Secrets, good stuff.
Yeah.
Kidding on the lying part. It's more like discreetly hiding and
it's for their good
and misleading them for their good. Yes. Thank you. Okay.
There you go. Okay. Question 6. We hear the saying, always date your wife. What is the best way to do that? Or what is the mindset that you have when going about that?
Good question. The mindset is I'm always thrilled with you. That's the mindset. I'm always thrilled with you. You delight me, and I find great delight in serving you and enjoying you. Now, the date night isn't it's not a biblical mandate, but it reflects biblical principles that you keep the fire hot, you keep the relationship strong. You see an example of it in the Song of Solomon. After they had a fight, they went away on a vacation to their summer cottage because they needed to rekindle and refresh after having been through a patch that was broken. You could get legalistic about it and lose the heart behind it. Well, we go out to dinner every Tuesday night at the same restaurant, with the same, red vinyl high back seat booth, dark room. Okay, well, that doesn't mean you're stirring anything and keeping it fresh. It just, but it also depends on 1 Peter 3. Like, I need to know my wife, and I think the governing principle behind date nights is you have a regular, no prescribed amount. But you also don't have a prescribed amount like of time in God's Word. Like, how often are you in God's Word? You should be in God's Word all the time. Well, do you do it in the morning or at night? Well, day and night. Yes, it's always in my heart and mind. So you could so script it that you lose the heart of it, but you could not have any order to it so that you never actually do it. So somewhere in the middle there is a regular rhythm that is expected that you would constantly refresh these 12 things that we've identified. Are we catching the little foxes? What are the things, where are we communicating? But I would also say those things need to be separate than like your planning meeting. Don't go on a date night and sit down. Let's talk about the schedule.
Yeah.
And what are the volleyball practices and the drama rehearsals? Don't do that. Like it should be decluttered of everything other than your relationship. It should be an opportunity that you share what we described earlier: fears, cares, burdens, joys. Now, the 1 Peter 3 emphasis, though, helps me because my wife and I go back and forth. The goal is I'm going to plan a date night that I know she would love and serves her. It's not like, well, I'd rather go to Buffalo Wild Wings, which, by the way, is severely declining these days. I do not recommend. Well, I'd rather go watch Downton Abbey, and snuggle in our room eating sushi. Okay. So for me, I know what my wife enjoys. And depending on if she's been in the house doing lots of different things and not been out very much, I know she wants to go do something that's kind of out there, spontaneous, fun, highly visually stimulating and engaging. If she needs to share her heart, we need to go to that dark room with the high back red velvet booster, chairs that are sitting there. We need that. So sort of knowing her and planning what would serve her best and then taking turns doing that is great. Yeah. One of the things, for example, that Jana loves is going to the movies. Now, I don't particularly enjoy that, so I get a great nap. But what happens is if she's been just going and going, and we run at a pretty crazy pace in our family. Yeah. So if we didn't make time for this, we'd never do it. But she loves, because of how she's wired, this stimulation of watching a movie that's kind of a whodunit, a challenge to solve while she's eating popcorn and garlic truffle aioli fries. That's her thing. Yeah. I just know she loves those things. And so I pay attention to what she loves. But the more fun and engaging, the more stimulating that way, she just enjoys. And I don't enjoy it as much because I can never figure out those movies, number one. But number two, I would rather have a conversation. I'd rather talk. I'd rather share hearts. Now, what ends up happening is at about 10:30 when the movie's over and we're driving home, then it's time to talk. And by midnight, 1 a.m., we're finally falling asleep. So then, 5 a.m. comes pretty early the next day. So that can be a tired night. But all that to say is if you know each other's rhythms and you know each other's joys, some people want, like, if you go out and spend a lot of money on that woman, she's going to be frustrated the whole time because she's like, you're wasting the money that you're stealing from our family's budget for food. And we just had this expensive dinner and we're hungry in the morning and we don't really have leftovers, but I don't have the money to work with to feed the kids. Yeah. Well, that's going to be a not helpful date. Some people don't want the overstimulation of a loud place where there's lots of activity. They don't enjoy that. Sometimes going out with couples, other couples, we went to dinner the other night with a couple at a place that we loved and had this yummy food and we laughed hard and we walked away and we felt more encouraged just in our own relationship because we did that with another couple. So mixing it up, having some variety. There's books out there. You can use ChatGPT to come up with creative dates. You can even use the CVI and ChatGPT to come up with very customized dates based on how a person's hardwired. Little plug I've been doing lately. My secret's out. There you go. So anyway, those are the kinds of things that really, really should be part of the rhythm there. I can tell you, I know couples who have no date night and their rhythm is more like we read the Bible in the morning and at night. And then, once a week we have a nice dinner with our family and I don't really relate to that very well. Not judging them or throwing shade on them for doing that. But I really think that something proactive, unselfish, others oriented, and fun, I think the key word is rejuvenating. What rejuvenates, or recreation, the word recreation means to recreate. Yeah. We're going to go recreate something now that needs the upkeep and the improvement of a quality in a new and fresh way so that we both walk away going, I'm better and more in love with you having done that because we've watered the flowers, as it were.
Yeah, no, I love your answer for that because the mindset behind it is how can I serve the other person? Right. It's not just a selfish date. Like I'm gonna put together something that I'll like, and you're just coming along with me. It's knowing who you're with and doing something that they would absolutely love. Yeah, absolutely. That's really good. Yeah. All right, question number 7. Since the Lord grants the gift of singleness until or unless he sends the gift of marriage, could you please revisit the gift of singleness, especially long-term singleness, as a calling?
Yeah, boy, that can go deep waters here. So let's see if we can get our arms around that, even to frame the question more specifically, although it's such a very specific question.
Yeah.
She is, or he is, whoever sent that in, correct at having understood what we taught on the doctrine of singleness in marriage, especially under the contentment. We alluded to it a few minutes ago, where God gives the gift of singleness to every person who's single. I think that's something that's misunderstood.
Yeah.
You know, most people, maybe you got the gift of singleness. Oh, no. Did you keep the receipt? I want to return it.
Yeah.
Or it's like the white elephant gift of the Christian life. Don't tell me God gave me the gift of singleness. No, that's not how Scripture frames it. 1 Corinthians 7 specifically says God has given some the gift of singleness and some the gift of marriage. And then he argues that each one has that gift, but then God is going to transfer you from one to the other potentially in your life. And here's how it should look. So the idea of, well, you got the gift of singleness, which means God's going to give you restraint to stay single the rest of your life. And even though it's going to really stink and everybody else is going to look at you with stigma, you're going to be okay with it. That's honestly, and I say it in those negative terms not because I believe that, but because that's how people are made to feel who are single. And so then that tempts them to create some desperate compromise to make some accommodations for somebody that they never would have picked before, but because they don't want that to be true. So that's so misguided and so wrong.
Yeah.
1 Corinthians 7, Paul says, I wish everyone was single like me. Because they could serve the Lord, and this is part of the question, right? They could serve the Lord with undistracted devotion. Now, a single can be distracted in his devotion to Christ too, right? They don't get caught up in temporal things. Their focus is only on pleasing the Lord. And the troubles that Paul says I'm trying to spare you from, a single just isn't encumbered with. Those additional weights and burdens aren't holding them down or tripping them up. They have a greater freedom. And Paul says, this is an advantage. This would be amazing if everybody could wholeheartedly give all that they have for as long as they live just to him without the encumbrances of all of these temporal time box things like marriage. Marriage is temporal and time bound. When you die or Jesus comes, it's over. Now, what's interesting about that is Paul will argue for it, but he's like, but not everybody can do that. Only some to whom God has given that capacity as a gift. And then there are others to whom God has given the capacity as a gift, marriage. So marriage and singleness are both gifts, and they are meant to be celebrated. And in the same way that marriage is to be held in honor, singleness is to be lauded and celebrated too. And sometimes, we got the singles group, which people are made to feel, well, if you're in that, you're only in that as long as you have to be. And then it becomes a meat market to find, the person that you're going to graduate with. Not so. Now, Jesus in Matthew 19, it was interesting. He was talking about divorce, not because the Pharisees and the scribes wanted to know, but because they're trying to trap him. And he starts describing marriage, and he starts describing divorce. He starts describing sin and the hardness of heart. And it's interesting because the disciples do something really, really insightful. They say, Lord, if the relationship with the man and his wife is like this, well, then who can be married, right? They even say it's better not to marry. This is Matthew 19, verse 10. If the relationship with the man and his wife is like this, it is better not to marry. They listened to Jesus and they concluded singleness is better than marriage. Now, Jesus, who by the way was single, Jesus, who by the way is engaged to the church and will be ultimately consummated with the church in his coming, right? Okay, but then Jesus's answer is this: not all men can accept this statement, but only those to whom it has been given. In other words, there is a special grace on those who God has called to serve him uniquely as singles, to enjoy that freedom and to escape the snares and traps that come with marriage. Now, you haven't heard us in this series talking about the snares and traps, of marriage. We've talked about the snares and traps of marrying wrong. But this is identifying something really important. So the single needs to not feel like half a person. The single needs to understand there is a unique gift that God is able to give. And then Jesus goes on to say there are eunuchs, and this is really relevant and important. There are eunuchs who are born that way from their mother's wombs. In other words, their reproductive organs don't work, right? And there are eunuchs who are made eunuchs by men, either by accident or by choice. right? And that was part of how slavery worked. Like Daniel and his friends, when they were taken to Babylon, they were made into eunuchs. That was part of their enslavement. And there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Like, I don't want to. I only want to serve the Lord. And there are some who just say, that's what I'm doing. And then Jesus says, he who is able to accept this, let him accept it. That this is good, right, and pleasing to the Lord. Now, the reason I read that verse is not just because Jesus said it, but because he also introduces the possibility of physical limitations. That there are physical, maybe even mental limitations that a person has that make being married harder. You think of someone who might have a mild or a severe form of retardation. That's also a thing. Now, is it possible that God might give them not only the gift of salvation, but a marriage partner? Yeah. And is that wonderful? Of course. Yeah. But what it raises is that there are legal issues there. There's medical issues there, healthcare decisions that have to be made. They're going to need the support of a community in their church. There's different kinds of challenges that they would face, in addition to all the other challenges that just being married to another sinner bring in this fallen world. But it's definitely possible. But so it's not to say that if you aren't the optimal, station in life, financial setting, physical well-being, or the mental well-being, that marriage is closed to you. That there are certain limitations that a person might have under God's sovereignty, that even in that, he still has in mind the very person that would come alongside to walk through life with them and to enjoy this gift that Peter calls the grace of life, and equip them with a capacity to serve that person. Let me give you an example you're all familiar with. Johnny Erickson Tata. Johnny Erickson Tata, when she was a teenager, dove into a lake that she thought she would just go into water, scoop herself back up. She didn't realize she was diving headfirst into a rock. Instantly paralyzed from the neck down. She's been a paraplegic. She is wonderfully married to this godly, joyful man. And one of the reasons that Johnny has such an incredible impact in the lives of also disabled people, believers and non-believers, and powerful impact and outreach to those who are lost, and a powerful support and help to those who are saved, but who still have those limitations, is because of a caring husband who dresses her, who puts her makeup on for her. The guy has to learn to do makeup. Do you know how to do makeup?
No.
No, you don't. But you know what he does? He makes her look beautiful and stunning. He takes her to her hair appointments. He dresses and undresses her. Now, I don't need to be specific or graphic by saying this, but there are certain things that a normal couple who doesn't have those limitations and experiences generally what most married couples get to enjoy that she can't give him.
Yeah.
So he's married, but functionally a eunuch. So there's certain things that they don't get to express or experience as a married couple because they have those limitations. But listen, that doesn't mean they're less of a married couple or less of a person.
Right.
That there are certain wonderful benefits that they enjoy, but there's some unique challenges that they have to be realistic about. And they need to make sure that they have the greater support of the redeemed community to walk with them and to still hold marriage in honor for them too. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, I don't know if I'll ever get married because I have this or that or this challenge. No, it is absolutely possible. And if God does not have that for you, so number one, we say don't rule it out. But number two, if God doesn't have that for you, then he does have for you a grace that Jesus spoke of here in the situation of those whose capacities are limited to experience marriage, that he will still impart so that you are still as fully satisfied in him and have all that you need in this life. So it really is a mistake that Christians make, certainly the world makes, that we have an opportunity to recover, to honor and celebrate even those who have disadvantages among us, who otherwise don't see a pathway forward for them. We can help them with that in God's design.
Yeah, no, that's so good. Okay, question number 8. How can God use a single person in ways that a marriage might hinder or prevent?
Oh man, I can't drop and go to the mission field.
Yeah.
If I'm going to take a trip, there's a series of layers of planning and details and logistics that I have to burden somebody else with. It takes multiple people to organize my life. The person who's single has almost complete, absolute freedom in several areas, geographically, physically, financially. I mean, there are so many things that are not holding that person back to go and do whatever the Lord wants them to do. There's things, let me get a little more ridiculous. Laundry. I hate laundry. I give the gift of sending out on occasion laundry so that my wife doesn't have to feel the burden of that, and it comes back clean and folded and nice. We just put it away. That's a gift. But there are just so many other kinds of things that you have to spend, your time and money on that keep you from what's eternal. So my goal in life is, how do I spend as much time and resources as I can maximizing my eternal impact? You can't do that when you are bound to so many time-locked things that just are part of life. Now, can you honor God in those things? Absolutely. Can you honor God in laundry? You can. Not sure how to do that yet, but you can. But a single person can serve the Lord by picking a ministry, by leading. Like when I'm with a couple, like we were the couple the other night. Hey, listen, our kids get out in 5 minutes. They're across the street. We got to go. Well, we were just getting into some wonderful discussions about kingdom stuff and some wonderful opportunities about what might be. Oh, that's the end. There's no limit on that for the person who's single. Paul, look at the Apostle Paul is the ultimate example of this. Highly adaptable, super flexible wherever he wanted to go. He didn't have the burden of, how do I feed 5 kids who are in tow with me who can't walk as fast as I walk? And there are times where, I just have to be aware my own limitations exist because I've chosen to have a family. Now, do you hear me describing that in a negative way? Not at all. I love my family. And what that means is God has narrowed the scope of my ministry to my family first, and then out of the overflow, what's left. The single person has no such constraints. So anything and everything that the Lord would have them and call them to do, they are ready to answer at the drop of a hat. They're Minutemen spiritually. They can go. You can't do that and be faithful to your family. You're a little bit more time box landlocked as a result of that. Now, the flip side of that, so that if you're listening to this and you're married, not to denigrate you, your wife or your husband has the wonderful ability to help relieve some of those burdens so you can be freed up to the Lord and what he's called you to do, but there's a give and take in that. So how much of that do you want to enjoy and experience is the question. And I know some wonderful single men and women who are laying it down and they don't even have a thought of getting married. Like the thought of getting married is like, are you kidding? This would slow me down. This would hinder me. I don't want to get married. Now, when the right, girl or guy comes along, they may think about that differently.
Right.
But for now, to be able to do that. So all that to say, it is a blessing and should not be avoided. If God has called you to single, I think the bigger question is, how do you know God's calling you to be married? Because singleness is so elevated as such a gift. How do you know? And we've given 12 questions to answer that, but that really is the question that remains.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of that is, I'm thinking of 1 Corinthians 10, verse 31, whether then you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. So even like you're married, you might not have the same ministry opportunities that a single person has. You still have the opportunity to glorify God in every single thing that you do. You are not limited in your ability to glorify God.
Yeah, amen.
Okay, question number 9. Is a vow of celibacy, such as one that a priest, a nun, or a monk would take, biblical? Why or why not?
That's a great question. Jesus' words in the person who's made himself a eunuch for the sake of the kingdom is described as something that's legitimate. I would say that throughout church history, there are those who've embraced celibacy as a sense of calling. And so I think a vow of celibacy feels to me too strong because if you break that vow, Scripture calls you a fool and you incur judgment from God. You swear to your own hurt, Psalm 15, and you don't change. What if God brings into your life a person that he intends for you to marry, but you made a premature vow out of some emotion or belief that you're going to be single the rest of your life? You got caught up in the moment. You thought that was God's calling, and now did God change? Well, no, he didn't. So to put yourself in that vow position, I think is too strong.
Yeah.
And maybe that comes from, well, I made a vow to a person versus I'm making a vow to the Lord. So I would do that very cautiously. In fact, Ecclesiastes 5 says, be very careful vowing anything to the Lord.
Yeah.
Because he will require it of you. You better pay. Remember the guy who said, God, I'm going to vow that whatever comes through my fence next, I'm going to offer up to you as a sacrifice and kill it. What comes through the door, remember?
This is his daughter, right?
Yeah, that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
So stupid. And we don't know, did he sacrifice his daughter or did he eat it before the Lord and get punished? The scripture doesn't say. It just leaves it like, don't be that guy. I think that, so a vow or the idea of committing myself to kingdom purposes with an open hand that says, James 4, if the Lord wills. But another biblical answer to that would be in 1 Timothy 5. It says that there are young women who become widows and they would try to vow that they'll never be married again. And they're going to give themselves in service to the Lord. Paul tells Timothy, don't let them do that. Don't let them do that. They need to get married. So Paul would, in certain circumstances, push against the idea of making a vow for celibacy. In fact, I'll read it for you here. He's talking about widows and widows indeed in 1 Timothy 5, verse 11. He says, refuse to put younger widows on the list, for when they feel sensual desires in disregard of Christ, they want to get married, thus incurring condemnation because they have set aside their previous pledge. And then they're going to learn to be idle. They're going to go house to house, gossips and busybodies, talking about things that are not proper to mention. He says, I want younger widows to get married, bear children, keep house, and give the enemy no occasion for reproach. For some have already turned aside to follow Satan. So what he's saying is this woman's going to say, I lost my husband. I could never marry anybody else again. And so they start serving the Lord. And now they're idle, going around house to house. That they really shouldn't be doing that. Their energy is spent in the wrong way. He says, if that happened to you under God's sovereignty, get married again. So that's what is. Now, is every woman commanded to get married again? No, that's not what he's saying. He's saying, don't give these widows who want to pledge, he uses the word pledge here, they want to pledge, I'm going to serve the Lord in this new way as a celibate single. Paul says, do not give them that opportunity. Tell them, instead, find another husband. Did you love being married? Great. The gift that your husband gave you was you loved being married.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing. You're like, I could never marry anybody else. No. If he made you love marriage and you don't have him anymore and he's in heaven, go find the one that he would pick for you as his replacement, as God's design, according to the standard that he has set for you, and have children and take care of your home. But don't dedicate yourself to that. So there's some qualifiers to that. Jesus said that there are people who do that, and he told the disciples, you better accept that. There are people in Ephesus who want to do that. Paul's like, not in your life. Not going to give you that opportunity because you will go against your conscience. The people that now learn to depend on you to serve in ministry can't depend on you anymore because you had desires that were natural because you're a young woman to get married. And now what happens to all the things that we've turned to you to look to you for to fulfill? You can't anymore. You've dropped your pledge and now you've opened yourself up to temptation. And some have turned away, apparently here in verse 15, to follow after Satan. Like it's that serious. So I think the vow of celibacy is something that you don't hear me really arguing for. You hear me more arguing like, be faithful if you're a single, be faithful if you're married. Celibacy itself may be ultimately God's design for you, but you only know that as he continues to give you that grace instead of a partner. And if you desire the partner, you desire a good thing, Proverbs says. And you obtain favor from the Lord.
Well, Justin, thank you for answering these questions. Hopefully, listeners, we were able to clarify some of these questions that you guys have, and we thank you again for sending them in. We thank you for joining us on this episode of the It Stands Written podcast, and Lord willing, we will see you on the next one.